I'm Scooter. This is Dr. Phil.
Howdy.
And in the back we have Pumpkin Coon. Pumpkin Coon's going to be handing out slips of paper and pencils if you need them. This is a question and answer hour, actually 55 minutes. And so it's dependent on you asking questions. It's what you want to know. And we are both bona fide homosexuals. Practicing. Still practicing. We'll get it right eventually. And all three of us are bona fide Fudanchi, so you can pretty much ask us anything you want, which is why we have the pencils and paper, because most of what you want to know, you probably don't want to stand up and ask. So
we have a question.
What was the last thing you guys said?
Fudanchi. Do you know what a fujoshi is? Fujoshi are girls, women who like yaoi, and fudanchi are men who like yaoi.
Literally more
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's the short answer.
That's the short
We could go into more detail. So, Pumpkin Coon, if you would start with the paper and pencil. If you'd like a slip of paper and if you need a pencil, hold up your hand. He's going to start in the front and work back. You guys will have a few minutes to write down your questions. If you don't have one yet, you can hold on to the paper, and when you think of a question, fill it out and hold up your hand, and Pumpkin Coon will come and get your question and bring it up to us.
We'll shuffle them.
Yeah. We'll cover that in a minute. We'll cover it. So while we're starting with the paper and the pencils, I'm going to give you guys a little introduction. All right. You can see who the seme is. So, I'm Scooter. It's written Scooter X, but the X is silent. I've been interested in Japanese manga and anime since I was about 3 years old, watching the original series of Kimba.
Wow.
Thank you to the old people there. Not the new Kimba, the old Kimba. I got interested in yaoi about the time that Gundam Wing came out, so that gives you an idea of how ancient I am. And my most recent interest has been in haiku, but I watch a lot of different shows and a lot of different series and read a lot of different manga, so I have fairly varied interests. We've been coming to YaoiCon since 2000? Yeah, it was either the first or the second year. And we did this panel, Girls Want to Know, for 3 or 4 years in a row. Then they took us out of deep freeze, and we're here again 10 years later. I think the last time we did it was 2003, 2004, something. So it's been a while. Dr. Phil got interested in Evangelion. I'll let you take
Yes. So, well, actually, I sort of go back to the ancient days of anime myself, but probably my major introduction to modern anime was Neon Genesis, and I had a interest in yaoi starting at about the same time as you did, I think. In fact, that's kind of how we met. I like pervy stuff. I like Hoju. I like Toromai. So you can think me as the evil scene. I like making boys cry.
And Pumpkin Coon, let's see, he wrote down his stuff. So he got part of his start in yaoi by watching Genshiken, particularly the character of Ono, because he liked watching how she was an otaku and a fujoshi character, and how she owned that in the series, and how that developed, and particularly her interest in bald and bold men. He also liked Ouran Host Club, especially the character of Nikozawa, because he likes the silliness and kawaii characters, but he also liked the goth occult within that. More recently, watching Denki Guy, he liked the character of Sommelier, who's the quiet one who finds perfect yaoi for the reader's needs. Also, I used to draw manga. Well, I still do, but I've written my own comics. I've worked collaboratively. I've collaborated on comics, so we have a pretty wide range of knowledge and interest to share with you all. So as you've finished writing down your questions, now you can hold your hands up, and Pumpkin Coon will start collecting them. The first question that... Here's my bad. We're being recorded for posterity. So.
Everything's okay.
Shall we do the Starship Enterprise? One of the first questions we had was, do I like yaoi or bara? I think we've answered that. Pumpkin Coon is more a follower of bara than I am. Yep, we still got behind it. So as you think up questions, feel free to raise your hand and get more paper or use your own and add them in as they come along. How about if you read the question and then we'll field them.
What is your favorite non-canon yaoi/parody?
Non-canon.
I have to parse all the parts of this.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. I have to
Define canon.
Well, yeah, a favorite. So a non-canon means that they weren't already a pair in the story. They've been shipped.
Oh, I see.
Personally, I tend to prefer the less obvious pairings. But that said, I think my favorite probably, and it's almost canon, so maybe it's the wrong answer to this, but I would say I like the twins in Ouran. I'm not sure if you can call that canon or not canon because of the way they play with that, but that's part of what I like about it.
In the bed with the elephants.
How about you?
I think I will take a pass.
Oh, that's fine.
Let us proceed.
All right. What is the yaoi cliche that makes you the most annoyed, frustrated, or confused?
Artistic or narrative?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Cock rings put on wrong.
Yeah.
A major source of annoyance. They don't work that way.
Yeah. They go generally behind the balls, not just at the base of the shaft of the disc. So keep that in mind, especially for you artists. You know, when we did this panel in 2002, we had internet. You had to crank the computer to use it, but we did have it. Things are different now. I mean, anybody who's writing or drawing, you can go on the computer and watch 14-year-olds do things that 34-year-olds never thought of doing 20 years ago. So the fact that we still see some of the same mistakes being dragged out time and time again is perplexing to us.
Perhaps it's tradition.
Right. Well, I think for me the most annoying cliche is the what they used to call in the yaoi circles the glowing cone of light. Show me or don't show me, but don't turn it into this sort of weird little glowy stick.
Fascinating use of negative space.
Let's see, besides that, any cliches? I don't know. I think part of what makes yaoi attractive is the silliness of the cliches. The seme who's completely unaware of his kohai's interest, or pick any of them. They're all cliches, and I think that's part of what gives you that little thrill. I'm sort of a bara guy, but I have the heart of a 15-year-old girl. Don't let her parents know; they'll want it back.
Can men orgasm from behind only? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Takes a little
If
work.
you're doing it right.
If you're doing it right, yes. Takes a little work, but yes.
And generally not the first time. So if you're thinking of writing that into your stories,
It takes a little work.
Yeah.
It takes a little.
it's probably similar to the number of women who can orgasm purely through penile insertion. Yes, they can, but most women, from what I've read, need a little extra stimulus. So I would say the same thing is true for men.
It also depends on what you're putting into it.
Yeah. And how experienced the seme is. How often do people get injured having anal sex? What kind of injuries are possible? That's a question.
Good question. How often? Well, you have to realize that there is always a little bit of injury going on, particularly given the dimensions of things that you're working with. I would say it's very uncommon to have a serious injury, unless you've bitten off more than you can chew, so to speak. But there will always be if you've spent some time sort of working yourself up, relaxed, right? You can very much mitigate the risk of injury. But if you just sort of go directly into the main game, that makes it a little more risky.
Foreplay and lubricant helps.
Yes. We are not self-lubricating, by the way. That's another.
Yes, there's another yaoi myth.
Cliche. We're not self-lubricating.
You're already wet down there. That's bad. He's already wet down there. It's time for a proctologist because you're bleeding, anal leak, and there's all sorts.
If there's anything dripping down there, I'm not touching it.
Yes, lubricant is something that's added. And I would say, generally speaking, the more experienced you are, the less likely it is that you're going to get injured. Somebody would have to be fairly clueless. The first or second time you have anal sex, you might be walking around the next day quite aware that it had happened, but not to the point of injury.
Injury is bad.
Yeah, if you're getting injured, you're definitely doing it wrong.
What are your favorite yaoi manga anime series? I think we sort of covered that a little bit.
Well, we didn't cover any of the yaoi specific ones. I don't really follow most of the yaoi ones, so I think I'm going to have to take a pass on that one. There's a lot of series I like shipping into yaoi, but most of the ones that my own the styles of drawing that I like tend not to be the classic Juné styles of thin, willowy men with shoulder-length hair. I tend to prefer drawing style more common to Shonen Jump, which is why I like sports manga that becomes yaoi, rather than... I remember years ago watching a series, and it wasn't translated, so I was just watching it, trying to figure out what they were. And it wasn't until the following year that someone told me, oh, he's a truck driver and the other's a construction worker. And I thought one was a ballet dancer and the other was a florist. So,
it's easy to make those confusions.
Yeah. I never would have guessed he was a truck driver. These are good questions, so keep them coming. If something sparks another question, just put your hand up, and Pumpkin Coon will come by and give you more paper, and we can also.
We have more. We have more.
Yeah.
More questions.
Pumpkin, get on it. Get on it. How does being gay carry over into other areas of your life, i.e., work, hobbies, etc.? And a side question to this: are you a novelist, writer, or writer, Scooter? To the side question, I'm more of an illustrator than a novelist. My ideal is to find somebody who writes the stories that I would like to illustrate, because I can either write them or illustrate them, but I find it very difficult to do both. One of the things I was thinking today as I was walking around the Artist Alley is America really needs circles. As an individual creator, it's easy to do a poster or a pin-up or a pin, but it takes a lot of work to do a whole comic. And in Japan, where they have circles of mostly girls working on these things, they can produce a lot more. So I encourage all of you to get on the internet and form circles and create more stories, because I would like to read more stories, not just pretty pictures. So how does being gay carry over into other areas of your life?
Well, pretty much everything. I am completely out in my life. People I work with know that I am gay. I work with other gay people. I work in the tech industry, which is pretty diverse in that respect. But I would say that the question of one's gay identity in everyday life is a rather complex one, because what does that really mean to be gay in other parts of your life? There are certainly ways in which my sense of identity and my sense of masculinity and my sense of self revolve around the fact that I am a gay. And I certainly I certainly don't hesitate to let people know that I'm gay. So that has certainly affected the way that people have interacted with me in the past and in the present, and both in negative and positive ways. So it's kind of hard to say. It's not like my being gay is limited exclusively to what happens in the bathroom. I told you I was a perv.
Or the kitchen, the living room.
The kitchen, the living room.
The car.
The car.
The hotel. The elevator. Yes, I was gay in the elevator. What is your opinion on yaoi proportions seen in yaoi manga and doujinshis, aka yaoi hands? If you're referring to those long, claw-like, tentacle-like hands, don't like them. Personal opinion. The same thing with the, I think Clamp is about the only group I've seen that can consistently draw willowy boys that I find cute. And I've never quite figured out how they manage to stretch them out that thin without snapping, but they manage to do it. But again, that's personal preference for what I like to read. I sort of go for the high school aged and college aged guys when I'm reading manga, and a lot of the yaoi stuff is older guys, and until you get there's like nothing for 30-year-old men in manga and anime who are between bara and yaoi. There's like this middle that you almost never get to see. All of the younger characters, I feel sorry for Japan, because if you only read manga and watch anime, it's apparent that everybody in Japan is an orphan. And that's why there are no models for ordinary looking people in the comics, because they don't exist, apparently. Or if they do, they've gone to America for 6 months so that you can live on your own with your cousin in Tokyo in a flat that is decorated in a palatial style while you work in a fast food restaurant. So that's my opinion on proportions. How about you?
Depends on what we're talking about proportions of. I think I would pretty much agree with you, except when we get to the more intimate proportions, they seem a bit off to me as well. Somewhat on the small side.
Yeah. Smaller hands, bigger dicks. Rounder butts. That's my opinion, you asked. How do you navigate your relationships with other gay men who don't understand yaoi?
Interesting. I don't know that... Well, I have a boyfriend who is an artist and who is into Japanese pop culture and not so much into yaoi. And it doesn't really seem to affect our relationship very much. Mainly because we kind of recognize that we both have certain differences in aesthetic tastes.
In my case, I would add to that most gay men aren't big fans of manga and anime, and so the yaoi just becomes this sort of even further out part of it that I would have to explain, A, why I would go to fanime, say, or why I enjoy watching kids' cartoons in the evening. That by the time, if you find someone who gets that, they'll get the yaoi part. If they don't get why you like anime and manga, then the yaoi thing doesn't bother them. I don't think I've ever found, I guess the guys who have come over who have flipped through my comics, most of them are into American comics, which are very different. So they look at the stuff that I'm looking at, and they don't even have the visual vocabulary to even figure out what's going on. I remember one time I was reading a comic on Bart, and the otaku next to me, who was peering over my shoulder, said, "Oh, I like," and I forgot what he said, but he obviously thought what I was reading was a story about two women. He thought I was reading a Yuri manga. I didn't want to disabuse him of that, but so yeah, it's generally not a problem. Every once in a while, someone will get a little squicked because it's like, oh, the guys look so young or whatever, but that doesn't happen very often. The second question.
Oh. Where are the POC featured? Oh. Where can you find other gay men who like yaoi besides here? The internet.
Then there was a follow-up question, where are the POC featured? I hope that means people of color and not something else in yaoi. I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of it. But I think if anything, that's probably more of a Japanese issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're experts on being gay. We're not experts on yaoi. Just to clear that up. Although I will say to my credit, after the first year that I did the Girls Want to Know panel, the fan guest of honor that year wrote up a little mini 6-page manga to go in the magazine that she was featured in at the time about her experiences in America coming to YaoiCon, and I was prominently featured in it. So I have been in manga. And she made me very tall and very skinny. Fabulous. Stories with female sex tend to oversell the G-spot. is prostate stimulation as fantastic as it's portrayed
Yes.
in Yaoi?
Yes. This is related to the previous question about, coming from behind, right? Yeah. Yes. Yes.
The only way someone's going to come from behind is through prostate stimulation, I would say.
Yes.
And I would say in most yaoi, it's probably not given enough attention.
And now for a serious question. Homosexual relationships are coming to light and are more acceptable now. Question 1. What was it like growing up as a gay man? Question 2. What kind of discrimination did you face? Question 3. How did you overcome these difficulties? Well, I grew up in the South. I grew up in the buckle of the Bible Belt in Virginia, in fact. And I can say that at the age of 14, when I kind of figured out what was going on, my first reaction was, oh Lord, please no. Because I cannot say that where I grew up in a very, very small rural Virginia town was a very good place to discover that you're gay at the age of 14. So for, like many people of my generation, that was 1979, I just repressed it. I repressed it and repressed it and repressed it and repressed it until about 1992 when I finally actually had a boyfriend. And that is when everything kind of went crazy. What kind of discrimination did I face? Well, I got called faggot an awful lot in high school. I dealt with bullies an awful lot in high school. And my solution to that was to be crazier than they were. So that's how I overcame those difficulties. And I overcame those difficulties by, finally getting a boyfriend and finally coming out and finally saying, well, this is my life. I guess I'm going to live it. Thank you.
And I'm delighted to say it's changed a whole bunch now.
Oh, yes.
I mean, when we were doing these panels 15 years ago, gay marriage was not really on most people's radar, and now it's de facto in 50 states, with the exception of Kentucky, one woman.
One county in Kentucky.
Yeah, one woman in one county. And even in Japan, there's is it a city or a prefecture that's thinking about legalizing same-sex marriage in Japan. So, huge changes in a relatively short period of time. And I'm curious to see how that starts playing itself out in stories, because you have sort of imaginary stories of men coupling, which is a little different than the reality of what is it like for two men who are married and going through all the same boring crap that straight people go through when they're married. We're starting to see that more and more in mainstream American gay comics, but I haven't seen that yet in yaoi or BL comics or games.
T for Two is a title you might really enjoy. High school boys falling in love, and it does start to deal with their relationship issues, real life, and being accepted by family and friends.
That's T for Two, for those of you who didn't hear that. I wrote that down.
We have a question in the back.
Oh, actually, another recommendation. If you haven't read any of her work, the same artist who does Antique Bakery did a series called What Did You Eat Yesterday? That actually is probably one of the most realistic, I guess, sort of mainstream manga that lies within the BL yaoi genre that deals with just everyday relationship.
Yes.
Of men and their third parties.
What did we eat yesterday? And it's also good because of the recipes. Yeah, the attractive guys having a real relationship, making tasty food. My experience growing up was fairly similar to Phil's. I grew up in San Diego, California. So it was California, but it was San Diego. I didn't really come out until I moved up to the Bay Area and went to school at UC Berkeley, and that's when things changed for me because I was in a more permissive environment. Most of the discrimination that I faced growing up and in the past was not obvious. You might get passed over for a job recommendation or a promotion, but they would never say it's because you're a stupid faggot. It's just, oh, we picked somebody else. So it's hard to know. And that's changed a lot. How did I overcome these difficulties? Getting a boyfriend, discovering that there is a community of other people like me, which was the gay community, which has changed as well. Places like the Castro in the 70s and 80s, it was a much different place. Gay bars were an important part of the gay community, and now gay bars are almost passe. I mean, they're,
That's where I go to drink.
Yeah, but not to meet guys, because if you go to a gay bar now, everybody's on Grindr and they're just looking at their phones. The glow of the screen, because they're waiting to hook up with somebody who isn't in the bar or who might be in the bar. They're going to go end up meeting. I've seen two guys walk out to meet somewhere else who didn't realize they were in the same space to start.
And now for something completely different. How do you give a blowjob for a long time without hurting your jaw? You take breaks. You take a break. I'm not sure what you mean by a long time here, but certainly, I'm just a little something.
It also depends on the size of the dick that you're blowing.
Yes.
Some, you feel your jaw becoming unhinged.
Yes, that's a special skill.
Right, and that is a skill, as well as repressing the gag reflex. Some people can, some people can't. I can. Just putting it out there. Introduction to Fujoshi character. Sorry, no, that wasn't the question. I got that. Sorry. Keep my
You have
notes.
to make piles here.
Yeah, I need piles. I didn't want to.
So many things you want to know.
My tea for two. What are your thoughts on the recent love for?
Fan something on something.
Male pregnancy.
I have no thoughts on that. I hope to never have thoughts on that.
I'm guessing, I won't ask for a show of hands, but I'm guessing whoever wrote this is much younger than I am, because I hate to disabuse you. This isn't a recent trend. I was looking at M-Preg drawings in the 80s, in the 90s, all these, if anything, these things are just, they become cyclic. Suddenly someone will do a really hot naga drawing, which is half snake, half guy sort of thing, and it'll explode and everybody will be drawing nagas for 6 months. Same thing with trends in furry comics. Oh my God, the furries are invaded. The furries have been around a long time. they go back to Looney Tunes, where before furries. Poju, one of your favorites, started as a furry artist. I met him at a FurCon years ago, and now he just mostly draws humans. M-Preg has been around a long time. It's not recent. What are my thoughts? Sometimes it's sort of cute.
There is kind of, I do know people who kind of have fetishes around this.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not common, but there are people who do sort of have things around that. So.
I find it, if it's treated in an interesting way, I can find it cute. Mostly I just flip the page and I keep going, but it's not recent. It doesn't bother me.
How does it come out?
question.
Next question.
This is the discard.
This is this. No, it's not.
Oh, it's not? Where's our discard?
This is the discard.
Oh.
Oh. Have you ever encountered or had heard of straight men turning gay or still straight, but is in a homosexual relationship due to their significant other? Yes, all the time. Yep, all the time. It's, you know, there are, I think I read that correctly. Where's that?
Straight men turning gay or still straight, but in a homosexual relationship due to their significant other. Well, there's a few variations on that. So yes, I've heard of it. The first thing is I would say, okay, well, they weren't all that straight to begin with. They were bisexual. Women's sexuality is generally considered more fluid than men's, but I think that's perhaps overrated. I think men's sexuality actually is pretty fluid, but they tend to get hemmed into dogmatic relationships earlier.
I mean, nowadays we talk about bromances, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of...
And most men in the world, certainly most men in North America, have fooled around with their friends in their teens. So, you know, they've seen other guys' hard dicks, they've played with other guys' hard dicks. They don't talk about it once they get to that sort of college age, but it happened, it was there, it's not really a secret. I lived in a small town in South Dakota for a year, and one of the guys who lived in that town, his nickname was Hook. And I found out months later that it's because his dick hooked to the left. And everybody in that, all the guys in that town knew that because they'd seen it.
Small.
But they were all straight guys. So anyway, back to the question. Straight men turning gay or in a homosexual relationship due to their significant other. Another version of that is mostly found in straight porn, which is more cuckolding, where the dominatrix is forcing the guy to have sex with another guy while she watches. Hot. If I'm one of them having sex with him. I was at Burning Man 2 weeks ago, and a woman asked me if she could give me a blowjob, and I said, only if your husband watches. She turned me down.
You'll like this one. Tell us your kinks you guys find liking when you encounter in any fictional series. Example, indirect kiss, inserting finger into, etc. Piercings. I love piercings. Tattoos are also very hot. Boys who dress like girls, that is also very hot. Scooter?
Oh, pretty much all of them. One of my main kinks is finding kinks that I didn't know existed. And that's one of the things that's kept me interested in reading Yaoi and the like, because Japanese women seem to be far kinkier than most of my friends. They come up with stuff that...
No shit.
Yeah.
No shit.
So yes, all of it. All of it. If we had a butler cafe, I would go.
Oh yeah.
If we had a maid cafe where it was all boys dressed as maids,
oh definitely. We should suggest this for next year, buddy. Everybody get behind these ideas.
When you fill out your cards as what you want, you know, for the convention thing, how did you like the convention? All of you should say that we need a butler cafe. That's my personal opinion. When does cum come back out if a guy comes inside you?
Well,
pretty
immediately.
quickly.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
There's nothing really keeping it up there for very long. It's just going to dribble out your butt and run down your leg.
Yeah.
Some of you may have experienced that, or something similar to it. So when, almost instantly, and where, it's coming right back out of the same place it went in. Good question. Good question.
What is your favorite yaoi pairing type? For example, manly sime, girly uke, small girly sime, big manly uke, etc., etc.
I like them all.
I tend to like the girlier ukes myself. But that's just
Yeah, I really like them all. I mean, for me, sometimes it's fun to. That's why I said earlier, what do I like in terms of shipping characters? I tend to like the ones that are less common. Harry and Draco is a little too obvious. Harry and Ron is way too obvious. Harry and Snape, that one just always bothered me, except where Harry's the seme, and then it got more interesting. Because there's some tension there with the power dynamics. So yeah, I like them all for different reasons. I think it really depends on the quality of the story, because you can make any of them work. And I also like it when they're more evenly matched. Like you could pretty much put any of the volleyball players from Haiku together, and they all work. I mean, they just all work. And in fact, if you put them all together, I would do that too. I'm a super feminine gay guy. Good for you. Do you think I should continue to just be myself, or should I try to be manlier? Do you think that there's an actual interest in guys like me?
Oh, yeah.
I constantly...
Yes. Speaking as someone who prefers his guys a little on the femme side, keep with it. Stay with it. Don't let anybody pressure you otherwise, because that is one of the nastiest tendencies, I would say, in gay culture is actually being anti-femme.
I just wanted to say thank you. That was actually my question.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, good.
You be you.
You be you.
You be you.
Well, this is actually kind of one of my little personal rants, because, you know, especially in San Francisco gay culture, there's a very strong pressure to be super masked, right? And if you go on Grindr or you go into Craigslist or whatever, and you always see mask for mask, I'm like, why?
Meaning masculine for men.
Yeah, it's like, you know, to me, those are the people who are so afraid of their homosexuality, of that, they're so afraid of that seeming a little femme will, you know, make them less of a man. It's just like, I feel sorry for them. It's like, if you can't deal with people who are a little femme or a lot femme, because it's some kind of challenge to your masculinity or your sexuality, you just got a problem. That's my personal rant.
I couldn't say it any better. Well, the only thing I'll add to that is on Grindr or personal ads or wherever you look, I'm always amused at the people who describe themselves as masculine, because you look at their pictures and it's like, or worse, are the ones who describe themselves as straight acting / appearing. I would never date anybody who thought he was straight acting or appearing. But beyond that, then you look at their pictures and it's like, no straight guy has hair that perfect.
Nobody spends that much time in his
beard. You want to meet them just so you can point and laugh. Pumpkin Coon reminded me, he was curious about How many people here are interested in, just a show of hands, if you're interested at all in Bara comics? Oh, a fair number, okay. All right. So it isn't all just willowy guys.
I'd say it's about a third of them.
How many of you, in terms of American comics or local indie comics, are familiar with the Lovable Oaf series? Anybody? Nope. Okay.
Local guys.
Yep.
Okay. Have you ever masturbated to Yaoi or Bara? Yes. Often.
Have you heard about the series in Japan when adolescent boy one day has a period through his asshole? What would you... Haven't heard about it. This is great.
No, see these Japanese women.
Right. What would you feel if that happened to you?
I would go see my doctor. If there's any blood coming out of that part of my body, I'm going to be very concerned.
The closest experience I ever had to that was I went into the natural food store, and I wanted a tea that would be sort of just a gentle cleansing tea. And the woman at the store must have thought that I was coming up for a drug test, and she gave me the take this tea every day for 4 days and your system will be completely cleaned out and you can pass the FBI drug test. And
I pass a lot of things.
Moody and cranky and my urine was like brown. Stuff was flushing out of my system so fast I thought, this is probably about halfway towards what it must be like. Don't want to experience it. Have not heard about the series. I will keep my eyes open.
While few and far between, why do you think some straight men like Yaoi?
No idea. Except there are straight guys who, and we don't have a good name for this. We have, in the gay community, women who like gay guys are either fag hags or fruit flies or lots of cutesy names. But we don't really have a good name for straight guys that like hanging around with gay guys. I have a friend. He's straight. He's been married 3 times. He has children. He is really a straight guy. He prefers going to gay clubs with gay men. I don't know if he just likes hanging out with the guys, but he doesn't want the pressure of like trying to be super masculine and all that kind of stuff. And so that's why he likes it. And so I imagine there must be some similarity for straight guys who like it, but I don't know. You'll have to ask straight guys. We can only talk about...
Figured out a name. Fag stacks.
I'm writing that down. I wanted to get the word Dutch boys going, but I think that would be straight guys who like lesbians.
All right, so we have the 5-minute warning, so let's go through a couple quickies here. Is it a myth that coming inside makes a guy's stomach hurt? Yes. I've never had my stomach hurt after having someone. No. I've never even heard of this.
If you did, it would probably be just nervousness or sort of the same thing as any sort of relationship, sexual encounter where you'd have butterflies or whatever, but not from the sex itself. Besides the lack of condoms and lube, what else is inaccurate about yaoi manga?
On the mechanical side?
Mostly in the drawings, the angle of penetration is usually wrong. I've seen so many where it looks like the lower vertebrae are being penetrated.
Positioning is everything, people.
Yeah. The internet is there for a reason. It's so you can see accurate pictures of people actually having sex. So, anybody who's still drawing the wrong stuff, you got to wonder why. Other than that, Nothing comes to mind. I think any good yaoi ought to be at least as good as porn, and most porn isn't that good. When I say that, yaoi is at least you get more emotional content thrown into it, and that's one of the things that I like about it.
Here's an interesting one. Talking about emotional stuff. Experimentation with friends. What is the emotional experience with that? Complicated. Very, very complicated. I would say that one of the experiences of being a gay man living in San Francisco is that you learn that the nature of sexual and emotional relationships is much different than what you get from mainstream culture. So there's actually been sort of a lot of writing about the notion of what forms gay community is the fact that we all have sex with each other. And there is something to that. I mean, if you certainly look at certain communities, like the leather community in San Francisco, pretty much everybody in that community at some point or another has fooled around with everybody else. And it does create emotional complications, but there are also people who are very into the idea of polyamory. And so, the short answer is it's complicated. It makes for great narratives. But it's one of those things that you kind of work it out if that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, I would say that most of the gay couples that I've known that have been together for any period of time have figured out that men are not by nature monogamous. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we still have with straight society is trying to cling on to that notion that they are. They're just not. In gay society, we understand that you may be committed to someone emotionally for a long time, but that doesn't mean that you don't want to have a quickie on the side with somebody else. There are periods of my life where I would say virtually all of my friends I'd had sex with at least once. There were like one or two exceptions to friends that I never had sex with. So it's more common than uncommon, and it gives you a bond with people. You also know more about them. You know what they like. You know what their potential partners are going to like or be like. So that's a positive. It does bring you closer together, and it's more complicated, but it is common.
In yaoi manga, the sex scenes show the couple in several different sex positions for what seems like a long time before either has an orgasm. In terms of stamina and timing, is this realistic? Well, sure. Pacing, people, pacing. There definitely comes a point where if you've been going at it for a while, you will find yourself, your muscles start to hurt. You can only keep going for so long. But hopefully by that point in the encounter, you're ready for conclusion anyway. And I just got the, we're done.
Yep, we're done. Here's the last one. Does nipple play occur as much in real life as it does in yaoi?
More.